So today I thought we'd be taking a look at the hashtag #US2 movement. I think most of you have heard of the Me Too movement in the wake of Harvey Weinstein being a creepy little shit, and the fallout and accusations of people being sexually harassing peoples and destroying careers of others based on accusations and nothing more. Because why live in an age of evidence where moral outrage can still win the day? Yay for social justice. But the #US2 movement is one of intrigue. It fascinates me and amuses me simultaneously because it is all about why haven't more black women been sexually harassed? Do I need to insert the imagine my shock bit here? Internets. No one wants to be sexually harassed in the workplace, but everyone would like to think that they're worthy of being sexually harassed in the workplace. I can, hand on one of my many hearts, tell you now, I do not, nor have I ever wanted to, nor have I ever fantasized about, past, present or future, being sexually harassed. I don't find it appealing, it is unwanted, and if it ever happens, I feel sorry for the person who's stupid enough to do it, except for Miss Misa Irate Bear, and probably Boogie2988, just saying. When I was sexually harassed at White Castle back in the mid-noughties, did you happen to see an Indian bloke and an Asian man, really hungry, stuffing their face with 40-odd burgers, looked like they were guaranteed to have the shits the next day? Doesn't matter. Causing me to walk off the line mid-shift, it was one of the most difficult times of my life, but it was nice to know that someone wanted to take advantage of me. Is this a Poe? How vain are you that you would think this? Is this a societal thing? Because I'm fairly boxed off here. I live by the ocean and the only things behind me are rapeseed fields, which I recently discovered are rape fields. That's not a name I really want to be repeating. My concern is that not enough black women are being sexually harassed in the media. Mere representation after all. In the past few weeks, literally hundreds of women have come forward to allege sexual harassment, and worse, against Harvey Weinstein, James Toback, Brett Ratner, and few, if any of them, have been black. Or maybe they have been. We just don't hear about it because no one cares. Possibly. Or is this systemic racism now? Which I think, in this instance, isn't necessarily a bad thing, really, is it? If less black women or black men have been sexually harassed because of preferences that are inherently racist to some, is that not a good thing for those black people to not have gone through it? Or do we need more representation in this? I know what I've just said might be construed as poor taste, but I think my point is somewhat valid, although I can see a few tossers getting triggered by it. Lupita something accused Harvey Weinstein of trying to pull the legendary effective massage gambit after spotting her in a play while she was still in college, prompting Weinstein to take a break from his 1-week stint in sex rehab to declare he would never sexually harass Lupita Foreign. Is it because she's skinny? Or is it because of the hue of her epidermis? Or is it because that rehab's starting to work? I don't know how sex rehab works. I assume your cock gets put in a vice. I just don't care. Harvey was a slimy little git. Although, some of the stuff we've heard about, it makes him sound more like a desperate man begging for it. That's not to justify what he did, though. Some of our most astute cultural commentators, including possibly people from the since-shuttered Teen Vogue, pointed out that Weinstein never issued an individual rebuttal to any of his white alleged victims. This was literally untrue, in much the same way that it's not true that the RZA waited a year to reveal that Russell Crowe spit on Azealia Banks. Isn't Azealia Banks that disgusting, crude singer that pisses everyone off by being a cunt? And not the good kind like Bering, whose channel's disappeared and I'd love to know why. Go subscribe to his BitChute, by the way, it is linked in the description. Now to address a few of the comments here. Maybe he didn't address his white alleged victims. There were quite a lot of them. I think at that point, it'd gotten so far that it had essentially proven itself to be true. And I think he did come out and admit it. So providing rebuttals to them would have been a bit poor taste on his part. That's not to say he didn't. Jesus Christ, the guy was everywhere. Either that or he's just in denial and didn't want to admit another name on his ledger. Why wouldn't Harvey Weinstein sexually harass Lupita Foreign? She's adorable. Was she in 12 Years a Slave? Because she looked fantastic in that. Racism, everyone. Perhaps he did sexually harass her and didn't want to admit it. Or perhaps he didn't, because he doesn't find her attractive. I know where this is going, and I think we can all agree the racism card in this instance is poor taste. It's far worse than me saying that the racism in and of itself in this instance was a good thing, because then people weren't being sexually harassed by individuals that they themselves are racist because they wouldn't sexually harass people of other colours. Foreign won an Oscar a few years ago, albeit for acting in one of those slave movies. I'm sure this is a po now. It must be. Maybe it doesn't, who cares. In one of the most memorable scenes from 12 Years a Slave, Foreign is forced by Michael Fassbender to whip Foreign for leaving the plantation to get some soap, thus reinforcing the idea that black men are incapable of or unwilling to protect black women. This tells me you didn't watch the whole scene. Yes, she went to get soap, but he had a gun put to his head to whip her, and he didn't whip her hard. And I say that in context to what Michael Fassbender's character did to her afterwards. You could see bone by the time that he was done, which led to, I believe, the male slave's character to shout quotes from the Bible, I believe. It was a pretty heart-wrenching scene, and it looked horrible. It was more a case that he was incapable of and not unwilling to, because he had a literal no choice. So please don't conflate the two. A few years later, Gabrielle Union's character in the movie Birth of a Nation fell victim to what's known in obscure fanfiction writing communities as steamy non-con sex. She wasn't rewarded for her effort with an Oscar, in part because Birth of a Nation was blackballed after a false rape accusation against director Nate Parker from the late 90s resurfaced. Well, there's bad optics for you, isn't it? That said, with films that get released, competition is pretty hot. The only thing you're guaranteed is that Marvel won't feature in any of it. Certainly not the Oscars anyway. No offense, Marvel, but seriously. Once it was clear that the movie wasn't going anywhere, Union publicly distanced herself from Nate Parker, despite the fact he had been found not guilty in a court of law, which shows how remarkably petty people are when it comes to optics, raising the question, why should black men feel obligated to protect black women when black women aren't willing to return the favour? Perhaps your communities aren't as tight as you think they are, and people are remarkably individualistic, especially when it comes to saving one's own career. Gabrielle Union has been cited in many an asinine think piece as the second most prominent example of a black actress being sexually harassed behind, again, Foreign, but arguably her incident, a non-acquaintance rape at a Payless Shoes in her teens back in the late 70s, doesn't count because it took place long before she was famous. I'm not sure these are the kind of things you want to put on pedestals and declare famous. Perhaps I'm the only one there. Union, who has a book to promote, has been making the rounds sharing her story along with the fact that Dwayne Wade likes to lie on the bed with his legs in the air like Lamborghini doors and have his asshole eaten out with either jelly or syrup. I'm not going to kink shame, okay? To hear black feminists tell it, black actresses are sexually harassed just as often as white actresses, if not more so. Well, if you base it on the population, then proportionately, yeah, they do. Unless you have some solid numbers here to back that up. Oh, and to those who are just wondering, I was being 100% entirely sarcastic based on that bullshit we get from people who talk about crime rates based on race. You point out black people commit more crime, and then they'll go, oh yes, but the population numbers. Most likely, black women aren't forced to have a seat on the proverbial casting couch as often because there's less competition for black female roles in films. So this is a glorified Mo representation article. Fan-fucking-tastic. Even though that was debunked quite handily by Thunderfoot when he pointed out based on the population of the entire country of America, and films divided by race and such, it showed that there was no disparity at all when basing it on representation of percentage of races within the overall population of the states. There aren't many black interest films, and most of them, if you notice, are ensemble pieces with seemingly every black actor there ever was, like a cinematic version of the BET Awards. Well, we have to put all the tokens somewhere. You know what? I'm going to finish with this final paragraph because this just still amuses me. The only way a black woman could be sexually harassed on a film set is if Harvey Weinstein were to produce a black interest film that was neither lowbrow holiday-themed BS nor slavery-related, and alas, Harvey Weinstein is legally not allowed to produce a film anymore. He might not even be able to shoot porn. Those poor, poor Wamminz. If you are black, and you need to be sexually harassed, might I recommend you get into prawn? or just Not think about it, you perverse shits. If you are one of those sick fucks that has this in your head and wants to be sexually harassed, get over yourselves. Isn't it enough that society treats you as a victim class anyway?